All right, well, everyone, thanks for kind of joining this afternoon. So what we got here is something a little bit different than your traditional VMTN Tech Talk. Joining me up on stage is a couple of our EUC vExperts. And hey, Alistair, we got the wrong deck loaded. So this is not hybrid and multi-cloud desktops, your questions answered. That was this morning. This is actually our EUC panel. And let's see if, how do we want to do this? Okay, so while we get the deck sorted out, I've got 3 of our panelists up here on stage. So Jens, if you'd like to start by introducing yourself.
Yes.
Lower, a little bit lower, it's on.
Yes. So, can you hear me? Good. So, my name is Jens Hennig. I'm a partner at Comdivision, and they are working there as a head of digital workspaces, and I'm VCDX in EUC.
I'm Stephen Wagner. I own Digitally Accurate, vExpert EUC, NVIDIA NGCA. EUC's been a passion of mine for the last 6 or 7 years, but I've been doing IT and virtualization all my life, even before I could actually do it as an adult for work. So,
and I'm the one that he points the squeaky toy after. So if I talk too much, he has to squeak me off, just like that. Yeah. So I'm Dane Young. I've been doing end user computing VDI products with all of the leading vendors for about 15 years or so, since the early days of what we now affectionately call poor man's VDI, where you have a Windows XP desktop that's on an ESX box. They use RDP to connect to. That was like the early days of VDI for me. So I've been doing end user computing for a long time. I own and run my own business. We do consulting and professional services, and I love talking about end user computing. So that's why he has to squeak me off, because I'll keep talking about this stuff all day long.
Is it really a chicken to yell at us for talking too much, Sean Massey?
Just introduce yourself.
What do I get? Oh, hi, I'm John Tolles, aka Mobile John. I am an expert in Workspace ONE most of the time. I'm also a Microsoft Windows 365 MVP. Been in EUC for probably over 10 years, not as much as some of these guys. But I'm expert on most EUC-facing technologies, not as much VDI, but pretty much everything else, Office 365, blah, 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 blah.
All right, so our first question for the panel is, what are the key trends that you're seeing in end-user computing when you talk with your customers? And so, John, if you'd like to start us off with that, and let's,
Sure.
Maybe 30 seconds to a minute.
So I have been very vocal that I think the next frontier in EUC is digital employee experience management, or DEM, or DEX, or whatever term you want to use. I think the most important thing was we're doing more or less, and it's very, very important that we start automating and innovating at that point, like capturing when people are having issues, opening tickets, delivering automation APIs to kind of get the job done.
All right, so if you want to pass it over to Dane.
We're not going to do this in any order.
No, we're just going to pass it over.
Okay, that's fine. That's fine. For me, the last couple of years has really been focused on hybrid everything, so multi-cloud and virtual desktops in a multi-cloud environment creates a lot of opportunities, challenges equal opportunities, so I see it as opportunities. So for me, that's where a lot of our time is spent on design, deployment, troubleshooting when things are working well, when they're not working so well. And when you look at hybrid multi-cloud, it's all about the applications and the data. So that creates complexity around how do I make sure that all the stuff is there when the user needs it, where they're going to log into, and making sure that all that stuff is working behind the scenes.
I would have to say that I see a lot of stuff with vGPU. A lot of organizations are trying to implement for AEC. They're struggling to do so, optimizing base images, optimizing their workloads. And of course, when organizations get into the GPUs, we start, of course, it starts the conversation about AI and implementing some of those workloads. So that's a little bit away from EUC, but it's something that I always see pop up, and we kind of have to know about that with everything we do with GPUs. I know Dane can probably attest to that too. So
Yeah, what I see is huge movement to the cloud. So with all the supply chain issues we have right now during pandemic, so getting a server takes up to a couple of months and so on. And the things you have to maintain them, update them. So a lot of companies are right now considering the cloud and having the desktops in the cloud. That's something I definitely see. And then additionally to VDIs, creating a VDI, running in a VDI is not longer rocket science. So when you get it up and running, so what's the next challenge is apps. So getting the apps automated, and what we heard this explore here about app volumes, the new innovations that are coming out, that's something that really is driving the VDI adoption quite massively, and that will be the next challenge over the next couple of months.
All right. So that actually segues nicely into the next question, which comes from one of our community members. And that I'd like Jens to actually start that question.
Give it back.
So that question has to do with image management. And how does that change when you go from like an on-premises Horizon environment to Horizon Cloud? And what is some of the advice that you give your customers as they make that transition?
So when you want to go to the cloud, so you have to think about, do I really want to migrate my old image that I'm running on-prem on Horizon in the cloud? Because in the cloud, you want to have everything new and shiny and not the bloated thing that's running somewhere on your on-prem environment. So when you go to cloud, probably Horizon Cloud and Azure, you can import a nice and shiny new updated Windows image all the time from Azure Marketplace and then build on top of that. And as I said before, it's not the operating system that's going to be the challenge, it's the apps. And the apps can easily follow you. So if you are on app volumes already, then basically it's the same. You just upload them, convert them to VHD, upload them to Horizon Cloud and Azure, and then you can run the same apps again. You do have DM support, so it's basically the same stuff as well. Just make sure that the user profiles and the apps are there. The rest is simply very easy. Who wants to?
Anyone else have anything to add on that? Dane?
I'm glad you gave the mic to him and not me. So.
All right. Stephen, do you have anything to add? Dane?
So I mostly deal with on-prem, but with everything that we've learned at Explore, I think you've seen some of the demonstration that kind of backs up exactly what Jens was saying, is that all the new platforms that are available simplifies the management of images, pre-made images, app volumes. I'm pretty much just repeating what Jens says, but it's I'd say that it's probably the way to go moving forward. So
I'll take a slightly different approach and say it's all about documentation, and once it's fully documented, you have a really good understanding of what the heck is in your images, then you can automate it. Trying to jump straight to automation without having documentation, you're just going to waste a whole bunch of cycles. Just trust me, you're better to document it first, get your entire procedure down for how you're going to build and manage your images going forward. Then you can automate it. And then once you're automated, then you can slip in new OS builds. Then you can go from 22H2 to 23H, whatever, right? You can slip in those new layers into your automation work streams instead of having to build everything from scratch every single time. So for me, it's about documentation and automation, which then gives you that portability to be able to go to any cloud at that point.
I do have one comment. I actually do know one or two things about VDI. I will say the nice thing with Horizon Cloud is a lot of it translates. So if you have a good strategy for a transition as far as, capturing and pulling out your app stacks, because you can import them, and they actually have done a really nice job with Horizon Cloud as far as spinning up and actually importing those apps. It's actually great. You go in and it spins up the VM for you. Like they've actually come a long way now with V2 on allowing you to bring some of that stuff in. I won't comment too much on gold images, but I have been very happy with what I've seen with apps.
Okay.
No, you're not in trouble. But I just want to play the ball back, basically. So, it's all about automating the apps, basically. So there are nice software out of it. So automating app volume creation and so on. But what I see as well. So, for example, take workspaces and the app volume support on it. You basically deploy dedicated machines, and a good use case for dedicated machines is to enroll them into an MDM to deploy software on it. So that's also a nice way to how to migrate from on-prem. So simply go to modern management and then simply enroll them into UEM, and bam, you have all your applications on it. And that's basically something that Boba John can talk about way too long. So that's why I'm going to give it to the mic.
All right. So I'm going to use that as a time to go to our next question. And this one I want to start with you, Stephen. You mentioned in your trends that you're seeing a lot of GPUs these days. And, GPU and VDI has been a topic that has been challenging for a lot of organizations. So the question I have, and I want to start with you, and then I'm going to go to Dane because I know he's already champing at the bit to answer this one. Is in today's day and age, do customers need a GPU for VDI?
There is no simple answer to that question. I get called into numerous different types of environments where they've spent fortunes on deploying vGPUs across their infrastructure. A lot of the time, this has been patchwork to resolve improperly deployed environments where there's other issues that are happening, and whether it's the partner or whether it's the internal staff, they just say, hey, we can optimize this by throwing in a GPU. All that does is masks problems. So it might make everything work for the specific release that you're on, but then as you upgrade to future versions, you're going to start coming up with all these other phantom issues that wouldn't even make you consider, or you'd be on a different troubleshooting trail trying to find out what's going on, just because you're compounding the issue by adding something that's not needed. Proper deployment of applications, proper optimizations, as long as all of these get put into place, technically, the only time that you should actually need a GPU is if you have some type of 3D accelerated workload, if you have developers that need a GPU to do some type of development, compiling, AEC workloads, anything that needs 3D acceleration. There are some benefits to having hardware encoding. That's a nice to have if you don't actually have the requirement on the application. But I see a lot of organizations deploy these when they don't need them. So that's...
All right, anyone who want to take a guess what the number one application is in any VDI or end user computing environment? Number one application. Browsers. Every single operating system deployed, modern environments has a browser. In fact, most environments have multiple browsers. You've got Chrome, you've got Firefox, you've got Edge, you've got Opera or other things, right? Depending on the organization's requirements. And every release of the browser is unaware that you're running in a virtualized environment. So the companies that develop browsers just are like, yeah, everything's a modern endpoint. It's got all these hardware capabilities. Just kick everything to the endpoint and have all the rendering and acceleration of the browser apps do all the stuff. So my personal experience has shown that when we've done endpoint assessments, when we've done virtual desktop assessments, when we've looked at the resource utilization, the number one app for GPU consumption is actually the browsers. I know it sounds shocking, but if your users are in a virtual desktop all day, every day, they've got their browser tabs open right alongside their Microsoft Office apps, and they're chewing all kinds of multimedia-rich applications all day, every day that are web apps. Those web apps sometimes can offload to the endpoint through multimedia redirection and other things. But if they can't, or if there's a new browser release that breaks some of that functionality, all of a sudden it's back in your virtual desktop environment, causing your CPUs to spike and cause a lot of additional load on your infrastructure. So my experience has always been, it depends, because I'm a consultant, that's what I get paid to say, right? It depends. But if you look at your environment and you run endpoint assessment tools against your environment, you'll see that you actually have a high utilization of GPU resources in the form of browsers. So do we have specialized applications like Autodesk products, Adobe products, those types of things? Yes, we do. And we obviously recommend GPUs in those instances. But the general purpose desktop that has a lot of browser-rich web apps can benefit from a GPU as well. So.
Can I actually add into that?
Yeah.
And make sure that you use the OSOT tool. Okay. I can't tell you how many times I get called into environments where the first question I ask is, when was the last time that the image was optimized? The answer is, we don't know. 6 months ago. You should be optimizing the image every time you seal it. You should be using the tool to actually seal your images. Going to Dane's point, if you have a workload where you don't need a GPU, the OSOT tool will actually disable hardware rendering for Chrome and some of the other applications. And you run this for them, they look at you like you're a pro, and it's like, no, you're just following best practices. So,
That's what defines a pro.
yeah. So use the OSOT tool.
All right. John had a comment.
Just a single comment. I don't know GPU like these two rocket scientists, but what I will say is that doing GPU more often than not is causing more problems than not doing GPU. I've had a few clients where they just gave GPU to everybody. Everyone have GPU, and we had situations like they're running they're running 4K monitors, black screens all over the place, and then because I mean a lot of times people just do it because they think they have to do it, and we all know how hard it is to unring the bell once you ring the bell. We had like literally like a 9-month case in a financial firm because they gave everybody 1 gig GPUs, which is not enough GPUs for 4K monitors, and they basically refused to do anything. And they spent 9 months fighting with VMware engineering over it. Because like I said, less is more, at least in my experience.
Yeah, you might notice I'm a huge cloud fan, but the benefit of the cloud is, you can test it. So if you're going to Horizon Cloud in Azure, there are lots of different VM types you can use over there. So you can testify with AMD CPUs, NVIDIA GPUs, different sizes, and then you can figure out, hey, is it really giving me a benefit having an NVIDIA GPU or not? And that can basically, affect or, that can basically be used for an investment. So do I ever really want to invest something in graphic cards and on-prem? Or am I going to stay into the cloud because cloud is simply cool? Yeah, but that's something that you should consider, even just maybe if it's just a very small test environment to figure that one out.
All right, so this last question that I have, I'm going to start with John on. Don't look scared to get the mic.
So it's not a VDI question. Go ahead.
No, it's not. And this is kind of more of a general purpose question. When you're onboarding a new customer or working with a customer who's doing a new system or an upgrade, what are some of the, and this could be across, Horizon Cloud, Horizon 8 on-prem, or Workspace ONE, what are some key things that you tell them, to ensure that they're going to be successful?
I mean, honestly, when I onboard a new customer, chances are we're onboarding new customers because somebody already screwed something up. So I mean, to be very blunt, what I typically do, I know I'm not often blunt, but I'm going to be blunt here, is I won't even touch anything until I do a health check. So I health check them, and then, because I mean, I'm all about like, let's prove our worth, right? Health check it, and then literally show them, because the proof is in the pudding. If you literally show them, okay, this is what you're doing, this is what you could be doing, this is what you're going to get out of it. Because I think at the end of the day, right, we all want to show the value. Like Steven said, sometimes it's just as easy as some utility or some tool you can run to just show, like literally show them why. Because I always teach people, ask why. Don't care who it is, ask why. Because at the end of the day, no matter what we do, no matter how smart the person is that's supporting you, it's inevitably your fault if they screw up. And everybody makes mistakes. I've had some really special ones in some really bad areas, like the DoD. We all make mistakes, and our own hubris can sometimes be our own downfall.
Okay. We'll pass it around this way. Okay.
So the question was, what kinds of things do you set up for the customer to have success?
Yeah, what kind of advice do you give your customers to set them up for
don't
success?
set it and forget it. That's the biggest thing. Don't set it and forget it. This thing is like, it's a never-ending life cycle. So you're constantly having to make improvements. And just setting up an environment, setting up an image, setting up the version of the management infrastructure, and then saying, okay, yep, we're good for the next 3 years. You're going to fail. It's inevitable. You get through that rollout, the user issues are all resolved. Well, then you got to turn around and do the next release. So whether it's constantly improving your images or your applications or your versions that you're running on, just don't set it and forget it. Constantly improve the environment, and you'll be successful with good consultants to help you as necessary.
Yeah, I can only second what they said. So, and follow the basic design principles. So, Sean, you know what I mean. Yeah, you did this with the VCDX, but that's, software's become so easy, and cloud as well. So not simply sit there and start deploying everything, click, 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 done. Sit back, lean back, and first think about what you're going to do. So make a proper design. Start with an assessment, then doing a conceptual design, logical design, physical design, and then simply only then start implementing it, because otherwise you're going to figure out later on, so why did I actually do this? Oh, I have no idea. Was there a design decision made? Were there design choices? Oh, I don't know. And that's basically is going to cover your, in a lot of situations, yeah.
Build repeatable processes.
So,
John, it's...
So this is the key to success?
Yeah, keys to success, things you tell your customers to set them up.
Key to success, 100% simplicity. Okay. A key example is the GPUs. If you don't need it, don't deploy it. I have a lot of smaller customers that end up self-implementing the entire solution stack when it's not even required. There's many different products to achieve your goal. You need to make sure that you factor them all in and keep the environment as simple as possible. Every component that you add to your infrastructure adds complexity. It adds more components that you have to manage, maintain, secure. And as Dane mentioned, some of this stuff, like a lot of organizations, they set it and forget it. And even if you remember 75% of the stack and forget the other 25%, that other 25% can topple the entire environment. So keep it simple, keep it sweet, know what you're running, maintain it, and take care of it.
All right. Well, that is our last question that we have for the panelists. Are there any quick closing thoughts that you have? Quick?
No, because it's not going to be quick.
My closing thought is that all of us love carrying on conversations around EUC. So if you have questions, you want to talk privately, just corner any one of us. We'll be around. There's also receptions and then the party tonight. So seek us out, find us. We love having conversations. There's no unimportant question or no question that can't be asked. Just come and find us, corner us, and we'll carry on the conversations.
All right, so with that, I'd like to thank all of you for coming, and I'd like to thank all of our panelists for coming up here today to share their expertise and knowledge. So thank you, and thank you.